Hi everyone, I'm Melissa Dudan. Welcome to Trending Vegas, where we're talking about the big stories you're seeing on your social media channels in recent weeks. I'm joined by a portion of our city's social media team, including Jennifer Davies and Shane Savannah Pretty.
What's up?
And our guest today is a local foodie, Philip Tzeng, aka Las Vegas Phil. Thanks so much for being here.
Hi, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So we love having foodies on because you guys just seem to take the prettiest of pictures and make us the hungriest, and we shoot this right before lunch, so you give us all sorts of ideas. But you were telling me before, you've been working on your Instagram and your social media presence for more than 3 years. How'd you get started?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I actually started in actual food blogging through Yelp.
Okay.
I kind of built my following through there about starting 10, 11 years ago.
Wow.
My first job here was on a swing shift, so I always needed to find new places to go after midnight.
Yeah.
And that's how it all really started here in town.
And so would you say Instagram is your biggest platform right now?
Absolutely.
Why is that? Is just because pictures and the...
Just visually, and then instead of writing a full review, I can focus on a certain dish and really blow up that dish.
Does it get tiring, or I don't want to use the word boring, but you have to find creative ways to keep showing different foods, correct? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, certain angles, you definitely don't want the same shots everyone else does, but I don't think it's boring.
Good.
If without social media, I'd still be going out all the time anyway, so why not document it?
See, you're an example of doing what you love.
Right.
So you also represent certain restaurants here in town. You help with their IG stories.
Correct.
And it's a process. You were saying some of these restaurants want a list a month out of what you're going to provide them.
Sure. They want to plan it out, but then a lot of them just know what I'm all about and just want me to do what I do.
Yeah, well, you do what you do well because you have thousands and thousands of followers, and now we're all hungry. So, well, thank you so much for being here. We have a lot of topics to get to. Our first topic got tons and tons of attention on social after Walmart announced it would no longer sell handguns and ammunition used in assault-style weapons. Now, this, as you can imagine, had some thrilled and others extremely mad. First, here's this post from Walmart. It says, "We've been working to understand the many important issues arising from the horrific events in El Paso and South Haven, as well as those raised in the national discussion around gun violence. Today, we're sharing some next steps." Of course, the NRA replied, "It is shameful to see Walmart succumb to the pressure of the anti-gun elites. Lines at Walmart will soon be replaced by lines at other retailers who are more supportive of America's fundamental freedoms." And then we have it from this doctor. He's very vocal on Twitter. "Never thought I'd say this, but thank you, Walmart, for such a large corporation to stop selling handgun ammunition and to tell its customers not to bring guns into its stores. Walmart is leading by example to end the epidemic of gun violence that Trump and the GOP refuse to do." We can't tell whose life this will save, but undoubtedly this act by Walmart will save lives. For many people, especially in rural parts of the country, Walmart is the only retailer within miles. So this will certainly have an impact. But then you have posts like this that say, "Please do not punish the majority to settle for the few. We have the law-abiding citizens deserve better. Please rethink this with common sense, not unresolved emotion." I do also have to say that Walmart, Walgreens, Kroger stores, they all said they're asking, please don't do open carry in our stores anymore. Personally, I think this is a great step. What are you seeing on social media, Philip?
It's pretty polarizing either way, but I applaud them for doing it. I think it's a great idea because in the end, if I go into Walmart, do I want half the people having guns or no people having guns?
Right.
Right?
Yeah,
it's an
absolutely.
easy decision.
Shane?
Well, let me talk about this from the marketing standpoint. In terms of sales, this is not going to hurt Walmart's bottom line. Guns don't make up a large portion of their sales. Right. What they're really going after is some millennial goodwill. Millennials, we all still think of them as teenagers probably, but they're 38 now. They're having kids. They're buying houses. But if you want some goodwill, at the same time not hurt your bottom line, this is very good for their brand image, and they'll get some pushback, but.
Jen?
So Moms Demand Action is an organization that was founded in 2012 to combat gun violence. Mm-hmm. They're very, very active on social media, and they liken them to the MAD campaigns of the 80s and 90s, Moms Against Drunk Driving, to change social behavior. And so I think it's really interesting that what it took MAD decades to do, it's taking moms demand action a lot less time to do because of the traction that they're able to gain on social media by fighting gun violence and maybe potentially mobilizing some of these millennial moms to sign petitions and to force change on these organizations.
Yeah, I think that's all good points. I applaud Walmart in the step of them taking this step. You know, a lot of corporations, they're just going to back where the money is, the politicians, and for them to take this step, yes, I think I agree with you, Shane. They're not going to lose out financially from this, but they're sending a message that we're not going to side with you just because you are who you are.
True.
They are taking a more community look at it.
And 2 of the shootings happened back to back at Walmart, so
Right.
they had to do something to respond to that.
Right, absolutely. Any other thoughts? All right, guys, we're going to go on to a topic, and that is MGM Resorts International's announcement for the site of the Route 91 Harvest Festival. Here are some of the social posts we're seeing. MGM to convert October 1 shooting site into a community center and parking lot will also create a space on the property to remember the 58 victims who died in the shooting. And this is just more of the same, people coming out with the announcement about the community athletic center. I thought this was interesting because the first thing that people said was, oh my gosh, the victims here. Oh, actually, here's this one. People died there and it's going to be turned into a parking lot? Okay. So kind of piggybacking off of that, people initially were upset because they didn't read the whole story. They read a headline and they didn't see that MGM does plan on doing some sort of memorial there for the victims. With that said, on social, I saw still a lot of people that said, I don't know, this doesn't feel right to be turning it into something else. What are you seeing?
I mean, it's a tough situation here because anything that'll be there will remind everyone of 1 October. But in the end, I think perhaps maybe leading off with the memorial and then blah, 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 then the parking lot would have probably triggered people less.
Right.
I totally agree. They're really bad about owning their message at times.
Yeah.
MGM definitely takes the approach generally with a lot of their bad news lately with like MGM 2020 and all that. They just like throw it out there and just let that bomb explode. And it doesn't feel like they ever try to control the message. And so they didn't post anything on social. They didn't get ahead of it in trying to control the message to the small degree that maybe they would have been able to. So I totally agree with you.
Right, and the news outlets, I mean, if they're sending a press release out to the news outlets or somehow leaking it to the news outlets are going to lead with community center parking lot coming to. They're not going to lead with, unfortunately, they're not going to lead with remembrance memorial to la 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 la, and they're going to lead with the stuff that's going to incite
I mean, it's
stuff
private
first.
property. Like they're a private business. Like I guess maybe everybody could see that. Like they're eventually going to have to do something with it. It is right there. It looks horrible how it is now.
Yeah.
But could there have been a more sensible way to do it? Is up for debate.
Yeah, Shane?
Yeah. Building memorials is hard. I mean, the city of Las Vegas did a great job with the Healing Garden, which is our memorial that's going to expand soon to make a better space. But, the Columbine shooting that happened in 1999, it took them 8 years to build a memorial. Pulse nightclub shooting, they still are in process. That happened 3 years ago. They're still working on getting their memorial built. Sandy Hook Elementary School. The whole thing was demolished and rebuilt. Aurora, movie shooting, 6 years to build their memorial. I mean, the fact that the city got the Healing Garden done in 3 days is just amazing, and the whole process was amazing. And I think it's appropriate to have a space separate from where people actually died, where you can go and kind of memorialize, reflect, and you can just have a serene environment where you can pay tribute to the people that did fall. I don't think it necessarily has to be on the spot that people were gunned down. To me, that's a little morbid, and it is private property. I mean, eventually it has to be something.
Yeah, I kind of struggle with this, and I saw a lot of people struggling with this online as well. What do you do with that space? What is the right thing to do? And I feel like you're darned if you do, you're darned if you don't.
Totally.
Because I pass by it, I don't want to see it because it brings back all sorts of horrible memories. But then at the same time, you don't want people to forget the lives that were lost, the people who were injured there. And so it is like this double-edged sword where no one's gonna win, so do we just move on?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that, Phil?
I mean, you're gonna have to compromise in some way, but I like the idea of it being on the spot. It's a good reminder for everyone in Vegas and the world that crazy stuff like this can happen.
Yeah, and I do have to say MGM did come out and say absolutely no tailgating at this spot. There's going to be, I think they want to remove that party-like atmosphere at this location, which I did think was smart of them to do. So we'll see how this plays out. All right, guys, let's move on to the next topic. And this is a great one for some discussion after some Twitter users blame the county for allegedly blocking them for no reason. Now, here's some of the tweets. It raises all sorts of questions on who government can or cannot block and should they even be allowed to block. So this first one is from Nikki J. Taylor, says, well, look at that. Will ya? Clark County, Nevada blocked me as well. Who's be running that page, and why would they just randomly block us adult performers? I've only liked posts from that page, never commented. The conversation went on. It might be illegal and a First Amendment violation. Yep, it's a gross violation of my rights. I'll be contacting that City of Las Vegas and asking who runs the Clark County NV Twitter account. This discrimination I won't take. I've done nothing to deserve this type of treatment. No different than a town hall meeting. And then this user says, ridiculous. We are citizens of Clark County too, but because of our line of work, they block us. So it just goes on and on. They talk about how they're registered voters and how they shouldn't be taken off. Now, I do want to preface this by saying we do not know why the county blocked these users. For all we know, they were sent some nude photos, maybe not. We don't know. So I just want to preface that. But I think this brings a larger conversation. Because Jen, you had to reply. City of Las Vegas was pulled in. Yeah,
we're so active, absolutely.
So how did you reply?
Well, I always like to start with saying, this is an issue we would only have in Vegas. So obviously we have a lot of strippers who live here and are active contributing members of society. So I do think that there is less of a stigma here than you would face in some smaller communities, for example. But they involved us. I was able to tweet back and send them our social media policy that explains when in very extreme cases we would block someone, but ultimately we're happy to have anyone comment on our stuff if they want to be an engaged participant. And this lady definitely sounded like a registered voter, so we think that's cool. Just don't send us spammy links and don't send us nude photos.
Now, if they do send you nude photos, you will take, you could block.
We could, yeah, our policy lays it out that we would potentially have the right to block at that point. And it's happened over the years, for sure. I mean, we see some crazy stuff out there.
Right, I mean, people want to get in on the conversation. If you post something that goes viral, they're going to post whatever they can to get attention on your feed. And this raises a larger question because President Trump has gotten in trouble for blocking followers. The courts told him you can't do it. AOC has also done it, and she says you can't protect harassers from doing it. So it raises a really good question. Shane, your thoughts?
Well, it's also, there's this fine line of, like white supremacist rhetoric is protected by the First Amendment, but it goes against Facebook's hate speech policies. So you have the issues with our Constitution, but then you have the separate issues of what does Facebook allow, what does Twitter allow. So you've got things that you can say as a public citizen and things that you can't say depending on where you are. So I can say all kinds of racist things out on a street corner, but if I get on Twitter or Facebook, then that's no longer protected speech, which is kind of weird. So that's one thing that we're dealing with. But I think the courts have pretty much settled the fact that you can't really block people as long as it's as long as it's a public forum type thing.
In terms of government entities,
right?
In terms of government entities, yeah.
We look at social media as being like a town hall. If you came up to city council and you were at the microphone and you started swearing at the mayor, the marshals would escort you out potentially from that one meeting, but you'd be welcome back the next time. And so that's how we look at social media. You might be warned, we might hide your comment in some cases, but you're welcome to comment on future posts. Let's just try to keep the conversation productive and respectful.
Yeah, the governor of Maryland just had this go to the courts also, and so the courts kind of specified he can still block comments that link to malware, ads, profanity, nudity, threats of violence, copyrighted material, confidential or private information. So it's not like a blanket, you can't block anybody. And I think we are pretty selective. I mean, it's better to be safe and not block people than sorry. I think, it's not a good, whatever the reason that the county is blocking these people, it's not a good look, and it's gonna blow up bigger than they wanted it to.
Government's under a microscope right now. It has finally caught up to us, and I think there are a lot of rules that private industry doesn't deal with that puts us under the heavier glare to really think through these actions before we do anything.
Phil, before we go, I want to get your thoughts on this because you have a large following as well. Do you specifically have some rules that you follow if someone, I don't know, talks badly or links pictures
Trolls,
or?
yeah.
Right, I don't, I generally don't, but I'd like to keep things on topic, and if it's completely off topic, like big one is someone talking about genital herpes on,
Right.
in the comments. So
I'm
I'd
sorry,
probably delete
I
something
just-
like that.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
I like
nothing
to
to
throw
do
that
with
in
steak and
sometimes.
Genital
crab legs.
herpes food. You know.
So then I feel like they shouldn't be there.
Right.
And
What
I totally understand where they're coming from.
Where do you feel just from a citizen, not an employee of the city, with governments being able to block or not being able to block? Your random thoughts on it.
So I think I don't think it's a good idea to block. I mean,
Right.
overall. But if we're talking about porn and things like that, like, who's even on Twitter for porn? Like, I don't.
I think you'd probably be
As this
surprised.
has shown, we were really surprised. There is a huge following for some of these, adult film industry and
Yeah.
or strippers online, and I guess more power to them. It is Vegas.
Right.
If you want to be, comment on our stuff and want to know what's going on in your city government, I think that's really cool, no matter what you do for a living.
Exactly. All right, guys, great topics. Phil, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
When we come back, I introduce you to the city's new Parks and Rec director. We'll be right back.